Hi there, my name is Bruce. I'm a principal consultant at DAS42. I've been with the company for about 6.5 years, and today we're going to be talking about Foundation42. So when you stand up a new Snowflake environment, you're really looking at hundreds of create statements, databases, schemas, warehouses, roles, file formats, stages, resource monitors, masking policies, and that's before you even start to think about role hierarchy. And most teams either copy and paste from a previous project and hope for the best, or they spend days writing the DDL by hand and they inevitably miss a grant, forget a future privilege, skip the role hierarchy entirely, or don't think it out up front. And then you pay for it months later when someone can't access what they need, or worse, they can access something that they shouldn't be able to see. Or a team that's new to Snowflake stands up an RBAC policy that doesn't scale, and when that platform is really humming and you have end users, your data engineering team is spending valuable time hacking around this rat's nest of not super well thought out access grants instead of focusing on delivering meaningful data products for the business. Foundation42 solves this. Foundation42 encodes our best practice Medallion architecture, bronze, silver, gold, and a utility database, along with purpose-built warehouses, file formats, masking policies, and a complete best practices role structure, and you get all of that generated in seconds with the press of a button. So Foundation42 lives within the DAS42 Infinite Improbability Drive, which is a native application that is hosted right on Snowflake Compute that is sort of a central hub for our project accelerators. One of those being Foundation42, and that's the focus of today's demo. So when you use Foundation42, you simply click into that tile, and what we're going to demo today is an imaginary world where you're in a brand new Snowflake environment. There's literally nothing there, and we want to use Foundation42 to really get to consumption and actually creating valuable data assets right off the bat, and instead of spending days or weeks wrestling with the foundational setup. So I have a test account set up here where I've just, cleared out a bunch of everything essentially. And so if I refresh this, I'm not going to have anything in this Snowflake environment, minus maybe a couple other demo assets that I use this environment for. So, you can see it's pretty bare bones. All that I've done is actually install the Infinite Improbability Drive. I have this MDM database here because it's kind of needs to persist, and it's something that I use for other demos. But for all intents and purposes, the rest of this is just a truly blank slate. I don't have any roles. I don't have any warehouses set up. Certainly don't have any databases or schemas. And so it's evergreen. It's as if I just started. And so what we're going to imagine is, okay, well, I want to get started. I want to build something valuable, and I want to do it quickly, and I don't want to wrestle with my infrastructure. That's the purpose of Foundation42. So I can come in once I've downloaded the application, and I can just hit deploy DAS42's recommended stack. And I'm going to be guided through this wizard experience where I just kind of set things up that are maybe a variable in input, and I'm going to let this take care of the rest. So I'll go ahead and hit next. And the first thing that I need to do is give the wizard some sort of understanding of the data sources that we care about. So we're going to just work in a fictional world where I need to have some Salesforce data. I'm going to have some ServiceNow data. I'm going to have maybe Workday data as well. But I would basically create a value for every distinct source system that's on my roadmap to bring into Snowflake. So we'll stick with this for now. We'll say 3, but this would scale to 15, 20, 100 data sources if we wanted that. But we'll keep it light and go with 3 source systems for now. I also have the opportunity to set up my storage integration right now if I wanted to reach out to a storage, like a blob storage container. I'm going to skip that for now, but just know that it's here to expedite that process as well. And then I can pick the number of target environments that I want to use. Some organizations use dev and prod, some use dev QA, UAT. It's flexible. You can kind of set it up how you want to, but in this case, I'm just going to roll with dev and prod. And this is going to give me a summary of all the things that it's going to do behind the scenes. It doesn't look like a lot, but the devil's in the details with RBAC, especially because you need to run independent grants across all of these objects, really. And so what we're going to see is if I generate this SQL, really quickly, it's going to create all of the things that I need to set up the DAS42 recommended way of setting up a foundational architecture to get off the ground. And if I copy this and I just throw it in I'll just create a new worksheet, for example, that is just, foundational object setup. I misspelled setup. I'm going to fix it. And I'm just going to paste this. And if I just Command A and run, we're going to see just how much is really required to do what, feels relatively simple. 685 unique grants just for 3 source systems. So this is going to take a little bit, not going to take a while, maybe 3 to 5 minutes. So we'll take a little break and come back once this is done running. Okay, so it's about 3 to 5 minutes later. Our grants have all run, and now let's take a look at what we've been left with in just a short amount of time. So I'm going to switch over to using the account admin role just so I can look at everything at once. And I'm going to show databases. And now what you'll see is out of the box, we now have way more than we had before. We've got our bronze dev and prod, our silver dev and prod, our gold dev and prod, as well as some utility databases to hold things like file formats, stages, and masking policies. We've also got a robust role system that's been set up. So this is, we use a concept of account level roles that are sort of your parent functional roles, if you will. This is what you're going to actually grant to users. And then we scope the rest of our roles to what Snowflake calls database roles, which is a best practice technique that allows for, more consistency and more governance around tightly scoped access. So a database role inherently can only act or own or select from objects that are within that database. So it's just another fine-grained level of control that not a lot of people know about, but our environment or our Foundation42 kind of just takes care of it for you. So we've got these high-level roles at the account. But if I wanted to look at, and I guess just to index a couple really quickly on what we've created, it's sort of different tiers of access, right? So you'll have, your data engineer, dev, and prod. They're going to be able to do basically everything in dev. Your data engineer prod is going to basically be able to do everything in prod. Data contributor is sort of that next step where they might not have the ability to delete or create new things, but they could write into existing objects sort of from a contributing standpoint. But again, it's scoped to both dev and prod. Then you're going to have your power analysts who are going to be able to read basically everything all the way down to potentially the bronze layer, depending on how you want to set it up. But they can read everything in either dev or in prod. And then you'll have your analysts. These are the people that are just running queries or doing downstream business intelligence work. And so those folks are going to be, basically read only on the gold layer. So a really kind of intuitive functional role structure that you could obviously scale however you see fit, and Foundation42 has tools for that. But this is kind of what you get right out the box. And if I wanted to look, okay, so let's go take a look at specifically what the data engineer prod role has access to. This is where we're going to start to see the hierarchy take place. So now you can see that this individual role has access or usage on 4 different database roles, one for bronze prod, one for gold prod, one for silver prod, and one for util prod. So really still clean. We haven't created a ton of bloat from a access perspective. It's kind of making sense. We're leveraging essentially what Snowflake does for role hierarchy, where I could grant a role to another role and keep things clean. If I wanted to take a step further, say, okay, so this particular database role, what does this have access to? I could do something like show grants to database role bronzeprod.dbc. And this is where really all the magic is happening. This is where these individual grants have taken place. And so this particular role obviously has the ability to do a ton of different things, which is where ultimately that's rolling all the way up to data engineer prod. And they have, widespread, sweeping permissions. If I looked at data engineer dev, for example, they're going to look very, very similar, but they're only going to have access to dev assets. And, this story will kind of keep playing itself out. So for an analyst, they're really only going to have the database read role contrasted to the, the DBC, the database create role that the data engineer had. So we've got a database read role for our analyst, and obviously that's just dev. If they're the analyst dev role, if we're in prod, we've got the same, but for prod. And then for our power analyst, for example, we're going to have just read access, but they're going to be able to go all the way back to bronze dev. So intuitive in the sense that we've basically got 3 tiers of database roles: a read, a write, and a create. All of those individual database roles are going to be comprised of the underlying permission sets that, make sense. So if it's a DBR role, database read role, they're only going to have the access to maybe select from all the tables in that database, or select from future tables in that database. And they'll have usage on various schemas. All of the nitty gritty things that you have to do kind of just been taken care of for you. This database role structure continues to kind of cascade at the schema level. So if I looked at just the databases that are in Bronze Dev, I had mentioned that up front we created, or we told the Foundation42 application that we're going to have three different schema. There's three different sources: Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Workday. So what it automatically did is create a schema per source for in the Bronze Dev database. So we can see that here. And then we'll see the same in Silver, where we have kind of Salesforce, ServiceNow, and Workday, and we're prepped to kind of bring in that data from in a raw format to the Bronze layer, transform it, clean it up, and route to the Silver layer. And then, of course, Gold is where we're going to do a lot more flexible and business-specific things, so we're keeping that ambiguous and for the user to kind of define as they're ready to build out their Gold layer. And then we have our util databases, which are going to hold things like external stages, file formats, masking policies, network rules. Everything is already set up for you. One other thing that I'll talk about that I haven't touched on quite yet is the concept. So these database roles are actually comprised of schema level roles. So if I show the schemas in database Bronze Dev, and then I said something like show grants on schema Bronze Dev dot Salesforce, we can see that, the DBC role is obviously getting specific grants around create, but we also have specific schema level database roles per schema. So here we have an SCC Salesforce and an SCR Salesforce. So what's happening behind the scenes is we're doing this very scalable architecture from an RBAC perspective, where the schema level database roles are actually what's being granted to the database level access roles. If DBR, for example, will be comprised of SCR Salesforce, SCR ServiceNow, and SCR Workday. And so the gist there is that it's kind of ever scalable. The beauty of this is that you don't have to think about that. Foundation42 will take care of it for you. You just need to focus on building things. So that wraps up our demo, and I'm just going to close this out with a couple final statements here. So in summary, Foundation42 takes what used to be a multi-day or even multi-week, heavily error-prone process and turns it into a guided 5 to 10 minute workflow. And in those 5 to 10 minutes, you're going to get a best practice Medallion architecture right out of the box. You're going to get a complete and scalable role hierarchy with database level and schema level granularity. You're going to get multi-environment support with automatic and clean naming conventions. You're going to get dependency validation so that your scripts are going to run clean the first time. And you get a reviewable SQL output so that you can make changes if and when you want to. This is not a black box. You have full control and full transparency. Foundation42, in summary, is your Snowflake foundation done right every time and really, really fast. And it allows your teams to now focus on driving real outcomes instead of, struggling with the things that the business really doesn't care about, which is that foundational setup. So if this is something that interests you or that you think you might be able to take advantage of, we would love to talk. We'd love to see how DAS42 can help you on that journey. And please feel free to reach out to us or take a look at our website. Thank you.